Hey there, Matt Hamilton, author of Through Travel and Error, Confessions of an Asylum-Seeking Canadian. Welcome back to my online readings. This week it's chapter 13, which is called Who Knew? Here I am driving in a car with three strangers on this cross-country promotion run, and it was a fantastic trip. We got to see a little bit of everything. Now, my only complaint was that because Vince was on an itinerary, we really couldn't stay in any one spot too long. Now, this story is about our arrival in a place called Chintsa, and we arrived on a pitch black moonless night. I couldn't even see my hand in front of my face, and I certainly had no idea what Chintsa looked like. But the moment I got out of the car, I felt this overwhelming positive energy, and I just knew that I was in a good spot. So we'll begin the story with me waking up the next day and beginning to take in the surroundings. When I awoke the next morning, I was quite hungover. The Smuggler's Cove pub, which was the best backpacking bar I'd seen to date, was having a party which carried on well into the early morning hours. I stumbled to the toilet. I was barely able or willing to expose my eyes to the light. On the way to the washroom, I passed a window. I took 2 steps past the glass and stopped. My brain began processing the information that my eyes were slowly transmitting. I took 2 steps backwards and forced my eyes open to look again. What I saw made my mouth fall open and my eyes, despite the pain, popped from their sockets. We were a couple hundred meters from the edge of the sea, but it wasn't the proximity to the ocean that had me staring in utter amazement. It was the glorious setting. Our cottage, being set on a hillside, provided me with an elevated, unobstructed view of the picturesque landscape. There were lush, vegetated dunes, a sprawling deserted beach, and this seemingly endless Indian Ocean. It was the most beautiful place that I'd ever started a day. My hangover disappeared and was replaced by a blissful smile. My initial assessment of Chintsa's power was accurate. This little chunk of coastline had an overwhelming natural energy that splashed you like a bucket of water. You couldn't help feeling rejuvenated in Chintsa. This place truly was the most beautiful place I'd ever seen. Words can't properly describe it. You need to go to Chintsa yourselves and see for yourself what this place is actually like, how magic it really is. Now, as I mentioned, we were on an itinerary, so only after 3 days we were off. Thankfully, a few weeks later, we were in Swaziland, and the 2-month trip was at an end, and the 4 of us, being solo travelers, were heading off in different directions. I was heading back to Cape Town. I felt I'd seen South Africa over the past 2 months, and felt I should use this flight to Namibia. That's a long trip, Swaziland to Cape Town. Thankfully, Chintsa is smack dab in the middle, so I'd planned to go to Chintsa to spend a couple weeks just basking on the beach, sitting in the sun and reflecting, I guess, about the past 10 months of my travels and really trying to absorb some of the lessons that I learned. Now, I realized that I'd made quite a few blunders on this trip, but it was through those blunders that these life lessons, if you want to call it that, were really exposed, and it was those blunders that provided me with the classroom to properly learn. So we'll continue the story with me sitting on the beach reflecting about some of these ideas. Nevertheless, these mishaps were important lessons, and at the end of the day, I was able to further add to my education about the world. This made my mistakes worthwhile. I proved to myself that I had an ability to adapt, improvise, and overcome. All things considered, I attributed my finely tuned survival instinct and the ability to jump ship at whim to traveling alone. Without question, my decision to tackle the planet by myself was the best choice I made. Traveling alone allowed me to do the runner from Brian in Glasgow. Traveling alone allowed me to follow Stacy to Frog. Traveling alone led me to, and more importantly, away from Tenerife. Traveling alone put me in a position to get bumped off an airplane and into the extra seat on Vince's South African promotion run. Traveling alone provided me with an opportunity to be selfish. Now, I mean selfish in the best possible way. I wasn't hurting anybody. But traveling alone, I didn't have any family, any friends, anybody to really consider. I didn't have to compromise. I was looking after my needs. For example, during this 2-month trip with Vince and the 2 other guys, at any point, if I wanted to get out of this car, I could have. There was nothing stopping me. I had a total freedom. I used to think I knew what the word freedom meant, but it wasn't until I began my travels that I actually understood it. I've been told my whole life that I come from a free country. We're a nation that isn't under the thumb of a foreign dictator, and we're a place where beliefs and ideas can be freely expressed. However, with our affiliation to the United States, governmental constraints, and the blinding power of the media, I'm not sure how much freedom we actually have. Commitment and responsibilities, such as families, friends, jobs, bills, and debts, are forms of a chainless constraint. We are willing slaves to the system. And, as a result, Canadians, unlike Australians and people from many other countries, find it very difficult to drop everything and go. Despite the financial freedom to explore the planet, many North Americans are restricted by a mental barrier. They are almost phobic about abandoning the safety of the Canadian life and escaping the velvet rut. We are seduced into thinking that this is the only way of life and that the alternatives aren't worthwhile. Whether the desire to explore the world had been quashed by family, friends, work, the government, or society as a whole, it is often difficult to reject the velvet rut and experience what the rest of the world has to offer. We are afraid to give true freedom a chance in case we lose what we already secured. To be brutally honest, I was terrified as well. Leaving Canada was the most difficult choice I ever had to make. Yet, once I made the decision, everything else came almost naturally. When I began my travels, I realized it was the first time in my life that I was truly free. It was like being born and raised in prison. I believed that was how life was supposed to be. Then, all of a sudden, I was released and tasted actual freedom for the first time. For this Canadian ex-con, the flavor of freedom was delicious. It was delicious and it was addictive. And I could do what I wanted. And one of the things that I was enjoying and really wanted to do was stay longer in South Africa. And I had an opportunity to do so. While sitting on the beach one day, I was talking to one of the girls who worked there, and she told me that the bartender was leaving and that if I was interested in the job, that maybe I should go talk to one of the owners and throw my name into the hat. And, I guess I took her consideration or proposition to some thought, and here's where we'll continue. At the end of the day, I had loved every minute of my time in education in South Africa. I saw no reason why that would change. One of the promises I had made to myself before I began my travels was that I would spend as much time in a place as I wanted. I wasn't on an itinerary. There was no need to rush through anywhere if I was still enjoying it. I knew that South Africa had much more to offer and much more for me to discover. Ultimately, I had the freedom to do what I wanted. I wanted to stay. And you know what? I went and talked to the owners and put my name in the hat, and I got a job. And although as much as I would like to think my Canadian charm and personality had something to do with it, I thought there might have been a little bit more. I believed it was the African pull that Sabrina had warned me about that was making it next to impossible to leave South Africa. It can also be argued that this incredible energy bumped me off a flight and led me back to Chintsa at a time when a job was available. I presume this powerful African force had put me in the right place at the right time. Whatever the reason, I understood that it wasn't my time to leave this exceptional country. I obviously wasn't finished with South Africa. Or maybe South Africa wasn't finished with me. Time would tell. Well, that was chapter 13. I hope you enjoyed it. Again, it was called Who Knew? If you would like to find out more about myself or the book, which is Through Travel and Error, please visit my website, madmattiesworld.com. And come back next week. I'm sure we'll talk a little bit more about my time in South Africa, specifically my time in Chintsa. Until then, have a great week, and we'll see you then. Bye-bye.